to American Slacker Podcast with Matt Gertz and Jesse Landers.
When I was living in New York, I lived sort of like these. There was a golf course, and there was a trail that you could kind of walk along. And part of it you would be like right next to the golf course, and the other part you would be in like just your movie picturesque trail. So one day, I went back to look at it because I remembered the guy's name, and I went to go look at the exact date, and I believe it was June 12th, 2012. Okay, it's a Sunday morning in New York. It's a nice about 80
Whereabouts
degrees.
in New York?
Staten Island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's not complete city like, it's more suburbs.
Yep.
And there's like sort of a mix. So anyway, I'm out walking, and I'm on the phone with my friend, and as I'm walking, I come to the part in the trail where there's just a shirt in the middle, and I'm like, what's that? So I'm walking closer, and as I get closer, I'm like, oh my god, that's a person. My gut reaction was to be scared, because like, this is a setup.
Right.
I was like, shit, what the hell's going on? So I'm on the phone with my friend, and he's like, just stay on the phone with me. So I get closer, and then I go to look, and I'm like, oh my, this guy's dead. Just because of my profession, I was like, this guy's 100% dead. So I went ahead and I called 911. And because I'm in the middle of the woods, there's no intersection. I'm not at Smith and Main Street. I'm like, can you tell us your location? Just like, the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
North of Oak and west of Elm.
So I'm standing there for about 20 minutes, and I just hear the I was like, listen, the guy is dead. I can assure you that. And I just hear sirens for like 20 minutes, just trying to figure out where I am. So finally they get there. There's, ambulance coming through the woods. Police come there, and I get investigated. Not because anything malicious, just you could tell that this guy, he had like running gear on, basically. And you kind of see where he fell. And he has like you see like the drag of the foot. You know what I mean?
Yep.
An older guy, let's just say 60 plus, right? And at the time, I was working a job where I was working trade. What I mean by trade is I worked for a bunch of funeral homes, and I was like sort of a freelancer. So I would never really report to work. I would only report to work when a funeral home got a call. So the funeral home got a call, and Mr. Smith died, so they would call me, like, hey, can you go pick up Mr. Smith at XYZ hospital? Because of that, I had to call them and say, listen, I'm going to be tied up for like the next 4 hours, because I couldn't leave, So I called them, and, they were aware of the situation and whatever. So as fate would have it, 3 days, let's see, that was a Sunday, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3 days later, I'm at one of the funeral homes I work for. I'm downstairs, and we're doing like our morning, dressing people, doing cosmetics, getting them ready for visitation. And I get a call from the actual funeral director at the funeral home. They're like, can you come upstairs? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. Come upstairs, and he is with the family of the guy that I found.
Oh, man.
And I walk in there, I'm like, how could I help you? And he's like, yeah, this is the family of the guy you found. I'm like, what? Are you joking? Like, what happened?
Yeah.
Just total fate. It was a real like closure for the family, that they were able to like piece together. Oh, he left the house at 3 p.m. and I had called. It was crazy because I literally like, what time did you call 911? I pulled my phone up and I was able to tell them.
Wow.
Yes, I called 911 at exactly this time. Just so circle of event, like how consequent,
Right.
So yeah, I ended up doing the entire funeral for them. Everything from the embalming all the way to taking it out to the funeral. It was just, when I had found him, I just knew his name, and that's it. Like, I would have never been contacted about it again. And just total coincidence. They go to the funeral home, one of the funeral homes I work for, at the same time that I'm there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's wild.
Yeah, that happenstance that he would end up there. I can't believe it.
of all places, when I try to be funny about that story, I usually tell people that once I found the body, I dropped my business card and ran. But
Oh man.
See, I should have done that. I should have done
like
that.
Like a lawyer chasing ambulances. You're just looking for bodies in the woods to drop your business card, pick up a little job on the side.
Oh my god! Exactly.
No wonder why the police are questioning you, man. This is the 8th time that they found your card.
They're like, so Victor, we meet again.
It's like that's like a weird mashup of like Dexter meets 6 Feet Under.
Yeah,
almost.
right.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Oh man, that's the best way I think we've ever started off American Slacker podcast.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was a good one. Hey, I'm Matt.
I'm Jesse.
I'm Victor.
Today-
I'm sorry.
There,
I
There
just
you
jumped
go.
in here.
there
I'm
he
sorry.
is.
No, you got it.
There's somebody else here today.
You got it. That wasn't us talking. That was our guest.
That was perfect. Yeah, and usually people don't chime in, but you're a natural, kid.
Yeah.
This is good. He is our guest today. His name is Victor Rubio. He is the host of Digging 6 Feet Under podcast, and we are happy to have him here. He also deals in the art of the dead, along with being the master of the air fresheners, as we talked before. He is.
Yes.
You name a pine-shaped air freshener, and he's got it.
I got them all. I got proof of it too. I'm not.
Do you have retros?
retros? What do you mean by retro? Like,
Are we talking? Do you have like a 1980s Playboy air freshener?
No. We got to be specific, okay? Because I can't ruin my rep. It's a very specific little tree air fresheners. We're not talking like, the 1990s.
You're sticking
like
to the
Beach Baby.
trees. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
I'm all about the trees.
Well, okay. What years did you start collecting these bad boys?
2008, probably up until 2010. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. You must have a good collection from having them collecting for that amount of time.
Like I said, I literally have a picture where my original idea was to. It started out as just, hey, this one's cool. You know how you do? You keep the air fresh and then you'll leave it on like your turn signal or even on your rear view mirror.
Yep.
You know, so I just kept doing that. And then like I was with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, oh, let me get that. And all of a sudden, I had like this, this rainbow hanging on my turn signal. The original idea was to make a big. How could I say this? A big little tree with like each, in the shape of a little tree of each one, like kind of color coded.
Okay.
So like it flows and everything.
All
I ended up. Right? All I ended up doing was just pinning them to a wall in my house at the time, color coded. And if, God forbid, anything ever happened to me, they would walk into my house. That's the first thing they would see, and they'd be like,
Oh, God.
certified crazy.
Looking like a weird air freshener Home Depot paint aisle.
It's like, no, it's not what it looks like.
Oh man. You gotta have someone on standby to be like, go over, unpin all those little trees.
Yeah.
And wipe my internet
No.
history.
Leave the money. Take out the pins. and you know what's funny? Towards the end of it, I emailed the little tree air freshener company, and I was just like, hey, this might be a weird email. I've collected every single one up until this time because they still release new smells.
Oh,
and
okay.
They're just basically old twist. It's like cinnamon, but now it's like apple, cinnamon, pear, something.
Oh man, they're just running the probabilities on those, and they're coming to the end. They're gonna be like coming out with cinnamon, apple, celery. Like damn,
And then,
It does smell like celery.
be like we need new scents. We can't keep going with these old ones. Running out of combos.
And then, like a few years later, it's just like, well, what about cinnamon, celery, apple? They're
just flip it. They'll never know. And then a guy like you writes them.
It's new.
So I had emailed them expecting, I don't know what I was expecting. In my head, I had built it up to like, oh man, they're going to, I believe it's somewhere up in New York, but I was like, oh, they're going to send me up to New York and they're going to give me a tour and everything. They sent me 3 new scents, which I already had, and a book bag.
Okay, the book bag.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
I mean, that's exactly what collecting something that lame deserves. You know, like
was it just like a regular old like Jansport?
It was Jansport, and it just had a little tree on it. You know.
Okay. What did it smell like? Most importantly.
It smelled like canvas, which I believe that's a new scent that's coming out.
Oh, okay. There you go. We actually, I think you're our second collector that we've had on. We had a Tetris
of little trees.
No. You got
I was gonna say, I'm gonna go. I gotta go fight that guy.
you're
this
gonna hold
guy
that
had 2,000 of them. I don't know.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to collect yours up and.
He's gonna go burn his collection.
I wish I could mimic. I wish the sound would work if I just threw my headphones down and just like, where'd he go?
Yeah, right. Oh man,
he's going to find him.
He stormed out. So no, the other guy he collected Tetris. Titles, so, yeah.
Yes, I listened to that. That's God, I love Tetris, but the way he went, you know what's funny? I'm sitting here as someone who collected little trees, and I'm like, yeah, I'm normal. I listened to him and how deep he got into his Tetris thing. I'm like, man, that guy's crazy.
Yeah, I roomed with him. He was he's an interesting guy. He's got a lot going on, especially in terms of Tetris, more than anyone I know. Yeah, he's not lying about the feud that they had going either about buying a case of beer and whatnot for whoever won. So so we bring on all comers. Victor's taking on anyone else collecting little trees. It sounds like calling them out.
Yeah, please,
calling them out. Anybody with those little trees.
So you had mentioned before that you grew up in Staten Island, right? Mm-hmm. And now you're down in Florida, correct?
Yes, I'm down in Miami.
How'd you end up there?
You know, it's funny. New York, Staten Island is one of the 5 boroughs. It's the lesser known borough, and basically, it's like it's you're still able to live in the suburban life, but you're still about a half hour or so away from Manhattan. So it's not really city like. When you say you're from one of the 5 boroughs, you just imagine whatever they put on TV. But Staten Island is really
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's where I lived is all suburban, but you just travel 20, 30 minutes and you're in Manhattan. I hate New York City. I've never liked it. I always felt like I was paying a premium for something I never took advantage of, and that's being in the city and taking advantage of all of that stuff. Things like the Empire State Building, Statue of Liberty. I don't know what's other stuff you do when people go to New York City.
Eat hot dogs.
There you go. I've never done any of that.
Food trucks.
I've never done any of that, and I was just like, why am I here? Surviving through brutal winters, wherever you are, just brutal winters. And I was just like, at the time I had no girlfriend. My family was well established, so it's not like I had anyone to care for or anything. And I was just like, you know what, man? I'm going to South Florida. I've always liked it there. I've always loved Miami, the whole culture. And I was just like, screw it. Picking up and moving. I actually moved here without ever having been here.
Oh, wow.
I was just like,
I was
so like
blind.
I was just like, I know I want to be there. I don't know exactly what part and everything. And I was like, I kind of just picked up and went. But I did go with a job in hand. So it's not like I just showed up and went about it.
You weren't playing a guitar with the case open in the cup and the dog.
Right.
Hey, I had a similar experience coming out here. I got the job, never visited, and just was blindly went. It's exciting. It's definitely exciting.
Yeah. I feel like if I would have done the whole strategic planning and whatever, I feel like I still would have not moved out, because I would have been like, okay, I got time, I got this and whatever, and I feel like just kind of doing it. It sounds so much. I don't know about you, but for me, it sounds so much more like, oh my God, wow, how did you do that? And then I just kind of figured it. With no disrespect, you're still in America. There's still traffic lights and there's still McDonald's. You find your way around.
People speak the same language. I mean, you can get around.
It's easy. Yeah.
It's not like, if you say even going to England, I'm sure in terms of getting, renting an apartment, it's like different standards, or you'd have to go through different channels or routes than you would here in the U.S. So, Yeah, it's not as intimidating when you actually do it.
And then I don't know about you, and I imagine part of California is like this, because I moved to South Florida, and this is basically like second New York almost, except it's 70 degrees in January, and everyone's about the beach life. You know, it's harder someone who picks up and moves to Montana. That's hard, right?
Yeah, I would say so. It's not too different out here, except for the Mexican food's way better.
Oh God, yeah.
The pizza sucks.
God. There you go.
You got to flip flop.
Sucks here too.
I'm wondering if Kansas has like mediocre everything. You know, if it's right in the middle. You can get okay pizza, okay Mexican
It's like
food.
frozen everything, but it's not frozen.
But the corn is fantastic.
Oh, dude, the corn's fresh, sweet.
There you go. So that's cool. That's awesome that you took that jump. How old were you when you decided to do that? Was that?
Oh man, I've only been down here in Miami 2 years.
Oh, okay. So it was fairly recently.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a fairly recent thing.
And you're enjoying yourself. It sounds like.
Yes, I love it here, man. If you know anything about South Florida, let me start here. The funniest thing about you live in Florida, it's like, oh my God, I got a cousin who's in Jacksonville. It's like, oh, that's great. He's 6 hours away. Like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah,
right?
Huge.
People are like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in Tampa. It's like, all right, well, I'll try and take off work and drive 4 hours to come see you. South Florida is very different than the rest of the state. The summers here are brutal. If you know anything about here, visit Florida in August, and you get why people are like, God damn, it's so hot there.
And you got the humidity too, right?
Here's the thing about the humidity, and I feel like I didn't learn about this till I got here. It's just as humid in New York when I was there, right?
Yeah.
The difference is at like 8, 9 o'clock, it tails down.
Okay.
And even in the morning too, like 7 a.m., you wake up, it's not as hot. South Florida, I'm going to say most of Florida, right? That humidity never dips. It's constant from like April into like October.
Oh,
it's just
wow.
constantly 88 degrees, and you're just sweating the entire time.
Damn.
Oh man.
But at least it's warm enough that you could probably jump in the water or the pool and like cool down that way.
Yes, but even that isn't, because even the water's warm. It's beautiful though. Like I can't take away from it. It's just beautiful that you could always go in the water. The payoff for that, I try to make this equation. Basically, New York and let's say Northeast, right? You survive through that winter, and your kind of reward is that spring, summertime.
Oh, yeah.
You're in Albany. How beautiful is September? It's just that perfect,
without a doubt, man.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. The colors. Oh,
it's just beautiful. And those nights when you start, bringing out the hoodies,
crisp.
The way here, it's opposite. You go through the summer and you get that reward from like November through February, where it's just 75, 80 degrees with no humidity. And it's just perfect weather. Like we were talking before, like San Diego. I imagine San Diego's perfect all year round, right?
That's really hot. Yeah, I had a buddy from college who was down there, and it was always like in the 90s or like high 80s for them.
Right.
Who dipped to 60, and they'd all be in hoodies, like just trembling.
Not used to that shit.
It's
the funniest thing in the
63
New York winters,
around here generally.
And that's nice, though. That's nice because it's. I would venture to say I want like a few more degrees warmer.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you tell me. I don't know.
I run hot generally, so it's nice for me. But my girlfriend shivers a little bit, kind of like Chihuahua, because it does get cold, and we are on the coast because and we got those winds coming in off the water, which makes it like feel a little bit colder than it actually is.
Right.
Yeah, wind chill.
But it's always dry, no humidity, not too bad.
Nice.
So let's backtrack a little bit. How long have you been in your profession, Victor?
I've been a funeral director for Memorial Day will make 11 years. So if I'm one of those people who, counting the months, I'm now 10 and a half years. I've been saying 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm closer to now 10 and a half. But let's just say 10. I don't want to be that guy.
You got a decade under your belt, though. That's pretty good.
Man, experience.
Yeah.
It must have been interesting, like, telling people that a lot of the times. I'm sure you get kind of weird looks every so often when you tell people that, or weird questions.
It's funny, like when I first went to school for it and I first got out, it was kind of like a badge of honor. And I was young. I was 20 years old. So I was kind of like, yeah, I'm a funeral director. And I'm like, not that I wasn't proud to be weird, but I was just like, I do something wildly different than anyone you will meet. And it was sort of a badge of honor. As I got older and you start dating and everything, and you talk to people and you care less about what people think. A lot of people are out there who just think of me as a banker, because that's just what I say I do. Because I would always get those questions, and I was tired of those questions.
Yep.
And I don't. And here's the funny thing about it is, I like informing people. I like telling people who are genuinely curious about what goes on. Totally cool, right? The people who are like, do you have sex with them and all this stuff? Do you touch them? Oh yeah, no, like people.
You've had people ask that.
Oh, like it's not like I'm not going off one person. I'm going off a lot of people, to the point where, like,
whoa,
it says a lot more about the person who asks that question.
Right?
Yeah.
Because what if I was like, yes, then what happens?
Like, how was it, man?
Oh man, it's just, and the whole rest of the dinner table's just looking at you guys with eyes like, what the fuck's going on?
Exactly. And so I like informing people and whatnot. So when I tell people what I do, it's funny. There's kind of two avenues it goes through. One, a person's really interested, and there's, how did you get into that? And it's a conversation. And people like, that's cool. So what do you think about this? And it's just the conversation just sort of trails off.
I listening to your podcast, I recalled you saying something about how you get a lot of zombie questions and stuff like that.
Yes, that was my next.
That's funny.
Yeah, and I say it too. That's all media driven. That's Walking Dead driven.
Oh, yeah.
That's all of that.
The craze.
Yeah, and it's just like, if you listen to the podcast, what I always say is, would you be afraid of a garbage pail? Because a dead body is as animate as a garbage pail.
It's not coming.
Neither are going to
you.
Move. Neither.
And yeah, it's just like, I mean, I don't know. Like, when I heard you say that on your podcast, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, what does the person expect? Like, when they ask that question, like how is the conversation? Like you said before about the other question, how is that going to go?
I love you. You can't even say it.
Well, I'm just like, I'm not. That's not the avenue. I'm the first avenue. I'm genuinely interested in how you got into this profession, because, like you said, it's different, But yeah, when someone says like, "Hey, you want a fucking dead body?" That's like, what the hell? See, I can say.
Yeah. What? What the fuck is going on in their mind?
Yeah. So I mean, like, zombie, not nearly as like. I mean, I like zombie movies. Me and Matt are big fans of zombie movies, zombie video games, but we understand it's fantasy.
Yeah. I wish more people did.
So it's almost like I was wondering, like, I wonder if he comes back with like, yeah, you believe in unicorns too? Yeah. Are you talking to the tooth fairy? Going to your dentist and like seeing what his opinion is?
Hey, bro, you ever seen anybody dream by a vampire?
Yeah, right. You're getting your blood drawn, and you're like, hey, I got some garlic in my pocket. We're good. Like, I got us covered. I'm like, what the hell? It's like, yeah, I know they're coming.
Yeah. And you know what? On that same level, there's people who, and I'm someone who I'm just like, if you're going to argue with me about something I know for sure, like, you win. Okay, like, if you're going to tell me something over something I know, I'm not going to argue with you. But I always get the same people who it's like, oh my God, yeah, no, my uncle told me once that, the body in the funeral home stood up. I'm like, I promise you on everything ever, that's never happened. And it's like, no, but my uncle told me he saw it. It's like, all right, cool. Like, I guess my 10 years and all the funeral homes I worked for, I've never seen it. But your uncle who was once in a funeral home saw it. Yeah, like, who am I to argue,
It's like, here, let me ask you this. Your uncle fucked with you a lot? It's like, come to think of it, he just flicked my ear every...
playing pranks on me.
Hey, he's flicking my ear every Thanksgiving, I mean...
He always had my nose when I was younger.
Yeah. No, I swear, he took it right off my face. Oh, man. So, yeah, like, having an interesting profession, it probably does get a lot of interesting questions asked to you.
Yeah.
It's what are some of the more genuine questions that you get in terms of your profession or that people would find interesting?
Good questions. Well, let me be straight up honest here. Questions I do like to answer is explain embalming. What happens in embalming? And it's not necessarily it's me informing people. It makes me sound a lot smarter than I actually am because I get to use big
well, that's
words
always
and everything. Right. So I always like answering that question. Sort of like what happens what happens when the person dies? Autopsy questions. What do you do when a person dies like this? And whatever that is, followed up by. Kind of like the worst stories of it, like when you pick up a body from a house or a hospital, kind of just real questions about like the day-to-day stuff.
Yep.
And less about like the fantasized stuff that surrounds it.
And
a lot ghosts, spirits, ghouls. I hate that questions. I'm not a person that believes in that stuff, but families have genuine questions about the job.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of that fantasy type question stuff probably comes from the sort of shroud of mystery that is around death and the industry related.
That's fair to say.
It.
That's fair to say, and that's something I've never even looked at it that way. Is that there's so much unknown about it that someone would get to the point where they believe a dead body just walks around the funeral home. So yeah, like that's something I never even thought about it.
It's almost like
about it in that way.
It's almost like I've seen a zombie on screen, and news is also on the TV. So, so those two must be related.
It could happen,
right.
Which you said before, there's a big media influence in that kind of stuff. So I wonder if it does come out of some sort of almost ignorance of the entire profession and the subject of death,
Yeah, that's a fair point. It's something I've never even thought of someone who's always been saying that. I never even looked at it like that. So yeah, that's definitely a fair point.
Can't hate them for not knowing, I guess, right?
Yes, all right. Ignorance is bliss.
But that's what we like to do here on our podcast. Get into like some interesting stuff like this that people might not be privy to in their everyday life,
Yeah.
What made you want to start podcasting? You have your own that me and Matt have been listening to.
Yes,
we both. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to say we both really dig. By the way.
Hey, there, nice word there.
So
my podcast is the Digging 6 Feet Under podcast. I host a What made me get into podcasting? I love podcasts. Man, I was just talking with a friend earlier. My first podcast was the Bill Burr Monday Morning Podcast. And when I first discovered this was exact like about 7 years ago, and I was like, this is so cool. Someone's talking to me in my earbuds, and they're just talking, kind of just like talk radio. But I didn't like the whole. I guess at the time it was only for me it was like news.
Yep.
And then I kind of got into sports and whatever, and I was like, this is really really cool. I like this. But podcast was so specific to what I want to listen to. So kind of like the thing with Bill Burr, I was like, wow, this is so great. I knocked out every episode. I backlogged everything. And then I was like, all right. And what's so great about podcasting is like there's a podcast on anything. So then I went to like Legend of Zelda and listened to whatever podcast I could there. And then like you go through everything you're interested in. And then it got to the point where I was like, I also like bagels, so let me start a bagel podcast. I started running out of podcasts, right? And then over the years, I'm someone who I get so deep into something that I'm like, man, how cool would it be to do this? So I want to say over the past like 3 or 4 years, I wanted to do a podcast, right? But I never thought I was worthy of doing something like I love Breaking Bad. But it's like, well, why would you want to listen to me over X amount of other Breaking Bad podcasts that are out there?
Right, looking for really, the cream of the crop in terms of that subject or that show.
Yeah, well, and it's just basically, it's like, well, why would you listen to me? I'm just a normal other dude who just likes something just like you do, and why are my opinions or whatever? I wanted to come with something. I was like, I'm confident talking regardless. So I kind of just toiled in what I wanted to do, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll do a movie podcast, blah, blah, blah. About 2 years ago, I looked up a 6 Feet Under podcast, and there was one out there and it shut down my my confidence. I was like, oh man, there's one out there. I didn't even look into it. I just knew it was there, and I was like, forget it.
Right.
Then you know what? I can't tell you what made me. Actually, you know what? That's a lie. The idea that I may not have time in the future to do a podcast, I was like, all right, I got to do this now before kids start coming and everything, right?
Yep.
So I was just like, all right, now what do I do? Like now I really want to do it, and now I don't even have the idea. Just one day, I was like, you know what? This show, 6 Feet Under, the people who do like it, 6 Feet Under it's one or the other. I've never watched it. I don't like it. I love it so much I cried. There's no middle ground. So yeah, I just kind of I was like, man, this is so cool because I could lean on being a funeral director, and that was my hook.
Yep.
Breaking Bad, I'm just a fan, or The Wire, I'm just a fan. 6 Feet Under, I'm a funeral director, so I could talk about that. And so, yeah, I just kind of, you research it, probably just like you guys did, right? You do your RSS feed, and you're like, oh, this is so cool, and you start throwing it together. And
oh, yeah.
Now I'm here talking to you guys, like, you know what I mean? It's just crazy.
You're out there live in the world.
Right? and it's always interesting to, hear back from the fan base, do all that stuff, even the logistical, looking at numbers coming in.
Yeah, and I have this one guy who emails me after every episode, and he gives me his recap to my episode. So it's like a recap of a recap.
Huh.
And it's, to me, it's like I wasn't doing this for any advertisement or anything. I literally just wanted to leave something out. It was, the way I looked at it was I was giving back to the podcast world. Those millions of Legend of Zelda bagel podcasts I listen to. I just wanted to give back.
Yep.
So yeah, just one guy emails me, and he just tells me what I think, and it's like, man, even if I only had one listener and that was the guy, that's awesome. That someone thinks enough and they want to dedicate that amount of time to just email you back. It's so rewarding.
Definitely.
Oh, I think that's the best part. I mean, when we hear from our listeners, there's just such the special connection there. I mean, from the art that you produce,
exactly.
Call it art. Let's call it art. But it's that's the reward, man. It's amazing that you're reaching people. And
if you're big enough to even make money, I mean, that must be a blessing. But for me, I'm doing this. It's such a hobby that. Yeah, a person sends in an email or they'll tweet me on Twitter enjoying the podcast. It's like, yeah, that's so awesome. Thank you. Even if you're lying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, we definitely get that feeling, man. Every comment we're like, dude, did you see that?
Yep. Texting back and forth.
Yep.
Getting all excited. Now, yeah, I thought when I first got in contact with you and I checked out your show, I thought it was really interesting. It is sort of, and it's funny that you brought up Breaking Bad because I thought it would be like a chemist watching Breaking Bad, and the little asides that you have where you do I think it's the music from the show.
Yes, sort of.
Point.
Yeah.
You do the music from the show, and then it's your point of view as a professional funeral director. It's I found that really interesting. I've been learning a lot in listening to the podcast.
Yeah, I think that's unique, man. And you couldn't have hit it better with your choice of what you were going to do with your podcast. I mean, it's so fitting. It's so smooth. It's natural, man. From episode 1, it's just entertaining. You're educating. It's got it all,
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to educate first and foremost, and that's why I started bringing guests on, because my idea was let the guests talk about the show and be able to explain what's going on and give their point, and I'll kind of sit there and just be that's not the way you embalm a body, or that's the way you do this, or actually interesting the way they did this about the funeral and whatever, So it's kind of like a two-prong attack to where I could rely on what I know best and let everyone else kind of talk about the show,
Yeah.
Yeah, you throw in behind the scenes information too, you cover all grounds. So that was one thing that I definitely respected when I was listening.
Cool. That's awesome to hear.
And now I had never actually watched 6 Feet Under before we had talked.
Okay.
So you actually can say that you've gotten another person into the show, because I'm on episode, I think 6 or 7 now. I think I'm on 7 in the middle of it somewhere.
Interesting.
And I've enjoyed the hell out of it. By episode 3 or 4, I'd say, is when I started to really get invested into the characters.
Uh-huh.
And now I have a favorite character. I have a favorite episode out of the ones that I've seen so far, and I'm trying to get through all of them. And alongside that, I'm listening to your companion podcasts with it. So
right.
So it's an awesome experience to have it alongside being a new watcher of the show.
Oh, well, that's awesome. That's awesome. You know, it's like you always want to recommend the show to someone that you really like, and then now I'm just doing a podcast, and you're like, oh, you pick it up. That's awesome. Wait, so who's your favorite character? I'm really interested.
My favorite character, I have to say, is Nate, because I feel like I relate to him most.
Right.
And Matt said because he's not gay, and I said, no, that's not the reason. You're being. I'm like, even if I could
out there.
Well, I could have
a bad joke.
Well, no, it was a fun. It was a funny joke.
Jokes on blast, man.
That was a funny joke. I thought that was funny. I could. I mean, I see at some points I do relate with David. Some of the stuff that he's going through, the self conflict of his identity, wanting to like be one thing in public and then be one thing in private.
Yeah,
that's totally understandable. I mean, hell, I have a day job. But then we say shit, piss, and fuck on this podcast. So like, I could understand the separation of self that he's sort of going through. But no, I would say Nate. And it might be the fact that I moved, away from my hometown. I'm away from my family and stuff like
That's
that.
Relatable.
The idea of responsibility. Totally. Episode 6 in season 1, The Room.
Yeah.
That's sort of the one where I was like, all right, Nate and what's going on with him and his father and all the stuff that he's finding out about, like, his dad's life that he didn't know. And like, your dad was proud of you. Oh, I'm Nate. I'm not David. And he's like, no, I know who you are. Like, that whole scene, I was like, oh, man, this is fucking awesome.
What's great, and if you don't mind, you could go ahead and edit this out. I don't know how comfortable you guys are. If I could ask how old you guys are. I know you're close to me in age.
I'm 28.
I'm 27.
Jesse's, yeah.
Okay. So I'm 30. So we're relatively close in age. The great thing about this show is if you guys would have, if you would have watched this about, let's just say 7. I mean, this show aired 16 years ago. So
yep.
A little funny fact about it is I'm 15 years late to this party. I'm showing up really late. Like, hey guys, let's talk about this.
But it's still so relevant.
Yeah, man.
And that's what's funny about it is, like, it's still relevant. And if you would have watched that show, like, I first watched the last season when I was 20 in school. Like, we watched it in mortuary school. I take it, you digest it, you take it in wildly different than I do now at 30 years old, where, like, I don't think I would have ever identified with Nate because I was still living home, and it's like, he is an asshole and all this, and Claire is kind of more, you feel closer to Claire. She's like this young rebel and whatnot. But I imagine it's going to be different when I watch it in 10 years from now, if, whatever is going on in my life. It's wildly different where you are and what your priorities in life are.
That's true.
You can take the show differently,
That's very true, because I didn't think of it that way. It is almost a sort of reflection on the stages that you go through in life through the different characters, if you look at it in that way. Because
I imagine a gay male interprets that podcast wildly different than I do. I'm a straight male, but that show, there's a lot of, in the first few episodes that you watch, whatnot, there's a lot of, I imagine a gay male, wherever they are in their life, or I guess wherever they live, I guess more importantly, right, can identify so much with David.
Right.
And he takes everything wildly different than I do as a straight male. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm like so almost removed in terms of culture from the time that this took place that when I was watching it with my girlfriend, we were like, oh, blah, 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 this must have taken place in the 90s because of how closeted everyone had to be. And then I found out it happened in, 2001?
Yeah, the season you're watching is 2001, so yeah.
And I was like, oh, shit, I graduated high school 6 years after that.
Yeah.
So it's like I was fairly young. There was still a lot going on, and I guess it sort of also opened my like perspective to what people were going through in that time. I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah. Of course.
And then the whole LAPD thing with Michael and Keith. That's interesting. He had made the comment in one of the episodes. He's like, oh. Some would say that you're being hypocritical because you're a black LAPD officer. And he was calling him out for being a closeted gay man. So
yeah,
there's a lot of interesting social dynamics that go on in this show that are still relevant.
What's funny is the first season, and if you're a TV show, you're a big TV fan, that if you ever go back and watch like the first season or the first few episodes, they look wildly different, and they feel so wildly different than they do in your later seasons. So that first season feels so, how do I say the word? It feels so basic compared to what the show eventually turns into.
And I already like it for how crazy it is.
Yeah. And that's one of the funniest things too, is they managed to make a show about death darkly funny.
Yeah,
there is really funny moments in there, but it's dark humor, you know.
Right, Matt, you had mentioned something before about it was the 6 feet under humor. We were talking about it.
Oh yeah, man. We both were talking, man. We love how you applied that, because the show has such a unique way about the dark humor, man. It's you don't see it's the way I was telling Jesse, it's ahead of its time in that aspect.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's why I feel like it didn't catch the way it should have. Honestly, I watched it. I've watched like, you know, half the first season, like way back when I lived at home. Again, like you just said, I didn't relate to it as well. Now it's a completely different story. You know, like I'm probably gonna end up watching the whole series, binge watch. How we all know how that goes.
Oh yeah.
But man, yeah. I mean, what can you go wrong with the idea of the story of death? I mean, that alone intrigues every single person on this earth. We all have to deal with it. It's the underlying element of everything we deal with. I mean, it's wild, you know. And the show conquers that, and the humor. It's beautiful. But going back to the dubbing of 6 Feet Under humor, man, brilliant.
And it's funny, and you know, like I'm not spoiling anything here, and just to give you like a little taste of what I mean by the 6 feet under humor is, it's within the first opening minutes of the pilot. The wife of the main character who dies within 5 minutes of the show opening, she's on the phone with him, and she's like, you know, if you keep smoking, you're gonna die a long and disgusting death. And he's like, all right, I'll throw the cigarette out. They hang up the phone. He gets fucking smacked by a bus, dead instantly.
Yeah,
wasn't he light? Was he lighting a cigar? At the time?
I think
he was lighting his second one.
Yeah, he might have.
Yeah.
And then you know, like take it a little bit further. She gets the phone call that he died, and she's like, "Oh my god, the hearse is ruined."
Yeah, because they just fucking bought it.
That was the first thing she said.
And then, like, that's what's funny about it. This is a woman just lost her long life husband, and it's somehow funny, and not like in a slapstick way. It's not a it's a heavy show. It's heavy emotionally.
Oh man, yeah, it is.
And that's how they make it funny, you know.
It's that tragic irony that they like to play off.
Exactly.
So I have to ask, favorite episode or favorite character in all of the love of 6 Feet Under that you have? You must like one better than the other.
I especially now at age 30, and when I had moved down here, I have like a different perspective on life. I like David the best. Knowing what David goes through after this first season, he's a tormented soul, but he's also businesslike. You know, each character has such layers to them, but I feel like I identify with David. Just while I don't have internalized homophobia like Dave does, you know, I feel like I do have internalized like a struggle of how I go about my life. You know, everyone has their own little things.
Definitely.
And it's part of dealing with it. It used to always be Nate. After I watched it, you know, when I got a little bit older, it used to always be Nate, because I always liked how outspoken and you know, whatever he was. But again, as I get older, it became David. A favorite episode, man, that's funny. You know, anyone listening, the finale. One of the things about 6 Feet Under is they're one of the rare shows to nail the finale. Do you guys know anything about the finale or not really?
No, I went into it clean.
The finale is widely regarded as the greatest finale to any drama series.
Wow.
when my first rewatch when I was a little bit older, like, and I'm not someone who always cries. I've only cried at one movie. I cried during the finale, and it's nothing like. Yeah, I don't want to spoil it. It's just, if anyone watches the show, they know what I'm talking about. There's a song to it that once it starts playing, you get choked up inside. The finale, they nailed the finale. But my favorite, I want to say my favorite episode, and it's kind of with almost with any TV series, is the penultimate episode. So like episode 12 before the finale. Okay. I just love how TV shows, they set everything up. You know, and it just kind of like, oh, what's going to happen? I don't know. I just always loved that idea of
that cliffhanger.
Yeah. And I really can't talk about it too much just because I'll, spoiling the hell out of it. But let me say another episode I could talk about. There's an episode, it's season 2 or 3. I want to say season 3. And it's called Death Works Overtime. And up until that point in the show would, if you watch the show like you guys have, each episode starts out with a death. And every episode they did one death. This episode they did, it's called Death Works Overtime. They opened up with 3 deaths. And
oh wow!
What's great about that is the industry, it's wildly unpredictable. So as we're talking right now, when I go into work tomorrow, we could have 3 new death calls. So that's 3 new cases we have to work on, and 3 families, whatever, And that's something that they didn't do on that show up until that point. So just you walk into work the next day and it's like, oh God, we got 3 new cases, and there's a lot going on. That season's really heavy, but that's the second episode that came to mind of just like it kind of shows like the onslaught that could happen sometimes. You could go weeks without having a call at your funeral home. And then one night you can get slammed with 3 or 4, and I like being able to show that side of it,
Definitely. Do you think it's a decent reflection on the actual profession? I know that there's some inaccuracies from time to time.
Yeah, and when I do the podcast, I start to nitpick on things, and I can't stop saying the phrase, I have to give the show its liberty, and I know it's a TV show, but that's kind of why I'm there to like nitpick at stuff.
Yeah.
I think the first few seasons they do really well, but they sort of moved away from it. Not in a negative way. It's just there was more interesting story to tell than there was to show. How many times can you show a body being embalmed?
Right.
So they sort of moved away from that, but. The general idea of, I don't want to say like funeral directors, they have a heavy tax or a heavy, heavy soul, but just kind of the toll it takes on you, not emotionally, because I think that's way over dramatized, but just, the day-to-day thing where embalming becomes completely, it's like second nature. You just do it while you're talking and whatever. And most people are like, oh my God, you're embalming it as well. It just becomes second nature. I pop in my Bluetooth, I'm listening. So in that aspect, I do like the way they showed it. And just like the normal, you got to get Mrs. Smith ready for 2 o'clock. It's like, don't worry, I got it. I'm taking care of Mr. whatever,
Yep.
So in that aspect, I do think they reflect the industry well.
They sort of make it look like an office in a way, like normal.
And that's what it is.
Business being conducted.
And I tell people all the time, it's like, besides the embalming, and it's like, remove the penis from the man, what do you have? Besides the embalming, I'm just a glorified paper pusher. I'm filing permits, I'm doing this and that. My job is no different than any other office job. I'm just filing a bunch of permits, making sure everything gets filed in on time, and making sure everything meets deadline. And I also happen to embalm a dead body.
Yeah. That's and it makes it more interesting. It's a little idiosyncrasy of your job. There just happen to be dead people in the bottom floor.
Right.
At Dunkin' Donuts, it's frozen eggs. At your job, it's frozen people.
Well, they're not people anymore. They're the deceased bodies.
Well, yeah.
How do you want to look at it?
Before we wrap this all up, though, I got it. Since embalming has been a topic of the conversation here, what is the actual process of it?
Okay.
As best you can without, I guess, confusing myself.
Okay. Let's set it up like this. The purpose of embalming, right, is to preserve the body and disinfect.
Okay.
So you're and these are just a few prefaces I'm throwing out there. Also, the first thing to go bad in your body is blood. And when I say bad, it's the first thing to decompose.
Okay.
So
it's a liquid. I would almost
Yes.
assume it's like gotta go.
There's just so much enzymes in there and whatnot that it's the first thing to break down. That's why when your heart's pumping, it's pumping oxygen in the blood. It's keeping it fresh. All of a sudden you die. All of that stops. It just starts breaking down. That's how you get your decomposition. Your gases start blowing up and everything. So in an embalming process, what we're doing is we're essentially, not specifically, we're essentially replacing your blood with embalming fluid. Embalming fluid is basically formaldehyde gas. Formaldehyde, in its purest, chemical, technical term, bonds with the protein in your blood and in your muscles. So that's why why they call it a stiff is because an embalmed body is stiff. It's hard. It's all preserved. Right?
Okay.
So how you go about that is, let me the best way I try to describe it is you have arteries and you have veins, and that's how they're distributing blood to your entire body, right?
Yep.
Embalming replicates that system. So like if you ever seen a movie, or even in 6 Feet Under, right? Like they kind of inject the artery. Oh, you've heard the term injection, right?
Yep.
What they're doing is they're injecting the embalming fluid and it's pushing out the blood.
Okay.
So you're injecting formaldehyde fluid in the artery, and you're pushing out the quote unquote bad blood out the vein.
Okay, so you're just sort of putting it in behind the blood and moving it out of the body behind it.
It's like
Right.
bleeding. It's
Right.
like bleeding breaks. You wait for the formaldehyde to come through.
You know what? Yes. I'm someone.
Yeah.
I just learned how to change my oil. Exactly. Just imagine you're doing it at the same time. Just imagine as you're
Yeah.
filling in the new oil, you're down there with the oil can, letting the old one out at the same time,
Yeah.
essentially. But
So
Yep.
I'm almost imagining it's almost like two incisions. One end is the in, one end's the out, and then once blood stops coming out and formaldehyde starts coming out, you're full.
Well, as a general rule, right, and this is like real technical, right? As a general rule, you're injecting about 3 gallons.
Wow.
3 gallons of water, and in that water is whatever 1 or 2 bottles of your formaldehyde fluid.
Okay.
It's 1 incision. If you're doing a quote-unquote perfect embalming, right, it's 1 incision because, okay, let me start here. If you take your neck, okay, right? The reason why slitting your throat is like such a harmful, what's the word? A fatal cut, if I could say, is because you that artery, your carotid artery, goes right to the brain and right to your heart. You slit that open, there's no fixing it. That's why your neck, you slit your throat, you're instantly all that oxygen going to your blood and your brain and everything, right?
Huh.
But what runs with that, with your carotid artery, is also your jugular vein. So if you heard, hit him right in the jugular.
Yep.
It's the vein.
It's the action movie vein to go for.
Go right for the jugular.
They should
The
rename it the
jugular's-
Stallone.
The I was gonna say the jugular is the Citizen Kane of veins.
Yeah, right.
So the blood you're injecting inside the artery. The blood is coming out the jugular vein, but it's one incision. If someone who's a nurse or anything, they know what I'm talking about. We call it VNA, and to remember, it's Visiting Nurse Association. But your veins, nerves, and arteries all run together, all along your body. So wherever you're looking at, your arm, your legs, whatever, veins, nerves, and arteries all run together.
Oh, okay.
Like cable wire. You're running cable wire and you see all those fiber optics, whatever. It's just like that. They're all running together.
Yeah, like they would have the power and the Ethernet and everything else in the same.
Exactly.
Sweet. I mean, that makes sense. I've like hit the back of my hand before, like where you can see like the veins, and it's sort of like had that weird tingle feeling. So I'd assume
Exactly.
that would be
Numbing,
because the
exactly,
nerves in
yeah.
there.
Yep. So in terms of when you're done embalming, it's just basically you inject.
You got to stop
you
before they
finish it.
pop, right? That's the
Well, you know, it's funny, but one of the first bodies I ever embalmed by myself, I was a total nervous wreck because I swore I thought I was going to explode the body, and I thought I was going to like be arrested
like a tire.
Well, because here's the thing, right? So when you're embalming, you know, it's almost exactly like that. When the first time you're embalming, and even if when you are embalming, the gases will build up because you are injecting, you know, other fluid into a body that already has fluid.
Right.
So sometimes you'll see during embalming a stomach will start to puff out.
Ooh.
Man. First time extremely novice embalmer, I just started freaking out. Like I'm you know, almost like a comedy skit. I'm running around the embalming room not knowing what to do. Like my boss wasn't around or anything. I'm just like, oh my God, this body's gonna explode. I'm gonna have to go to Canada, dye my hair, Mexico.
You're looking for something heavy to put on the stomach, but then the head gets bigger, and you got to put that in a vice.
Oh God, no. No, what's funny about it, the next part in the embalming process after you do your injection and you get all your blood out, there's this movie, the best way they do it, man, there's this movie, it's 1995, it's Danny DeVito and I forget whoever else. Man, anyway, he's aspirating. Do you know what the term aspirating means?
No, I don't believe that.
Aspirating is...
We're going to go with no.
You know...
for the listeners, we're going to say no.
Yeah, for the listeners. You guys know, but let me explain to
Totally.
It's to like aspirate, like to take out in its purest form. You're drawing out.
Okay.
In terms of embalming, we have this trocar, and basically it's like a long stick that at the end has like a point. So what you do is like you kind of, if you ever heard like, oh, do you stab people when you're embalming, whatever? Basically, you're taking the stick, you're going like in around like your belly button area.
Okay.
And with the stick, and there's suction, right? And what you're doing is you're piercing all the organs to draw all that blood out and all the fluid that builds up. And the gas, especially. You're mostly doing it for the gas. So that person, like I was saying, my first embalming, that stomach's growing bigger. As soon as I stuck that the trocar in there, that's aspirating and it's sucking everything out, all of a sudden that stomach went, you know?
Huh.
I don't know if that sound translated over the mic. It's everything
I heard
going
it.
down.
Sounded like someone stabbed my basketball and sent me home.
Exactly.
It's like a sad little kid from the basketball court.
I should have you there to help me with analogies because I struggle so much when I'm trying to explain something to people, and you're hitting me with every analogy possible.
I'm ridiculous. They're not always on point. Matt can tell you.
No, but he's generally pretty good. I'd say like 95% of the time he nails it.
Yeah, you're nailing every single one of them.
I mean, I was gonna say another analogy to make an analogy for how well I am at analogies.
All right, let's calm him down before he blows.
I'm like an old Southern guy on a porch, you know, sipping iced tea, like just popping out analogies about what things are and aren't.
You're the analogy king. Good God.
No, I just never know how to say it directly, I guess, is what it is.
Yeah. I'm someone who appreciates a good analogy, so yes, thank you.
So that's really interesting, though. Is that like halfway through the process?
Okay, so let me follow through. So after you're aspirating, right, you're drawing out all the gases and everything in their cavity. When I say your cavity, your thoracic cavity. So just picture from your hip all the way up until your shoulder. It's just where all your organs are, right? After that, it's basically putting your finishing touches. When they say, I'm sure you've heard the term, like they sew their mouth shut, or they sew the eyes shut, they glue the eyes shut. For the most part, that's somewhat true. Like for the eyes, we sort of put like a plastic contact lenses.
Okay.
And it's just to give the eye a shape, because sometimes eyes sink. There's nothing keeping your body moving and whatnot, and everything, gravity starts working. So everything kind of starts.
So you're telling me there's no way?
Yeah. We got an analogy coming. Hit me.
No. I was gonna say there's no way to get a wink going on. Then you're saying
there's no way to get a what?
A wink. You can't like ask for a wink. Like just get one eye.
One.
So you could like give him one last like there you go before before heading off to the next
Grandpa was
one.
always winking. Is there any way you can work that in there?
Like raise one eyebrow, a little wink, maybe a toothpick in the side.
If it could happen, believe me, it would.
That Frederico on 6 Feet Under could maybe pull it off. He's pretty good.
Probably.
Pretty talented.
I'm not as good as him.
The cat food under the breast I thought was quite hilarious in the one episode.
Did you listen to that podcast episode? Because let me ask you, what do you think he meant by that? He meant actual cat food?
Yeah, I think it's like the small circular cans of cat food. He must have propped them up because he said his sister or someone had done a cat food commercial and they sent him over the boxes of them. So I assumed he had just taken 2 cans of cat food and just like propped them up under there to make sure everything's set right.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is he actually took the food out of the can and he molded it. Yeah, no, exactly. This entire time I thought he actually meant cans. You know, we're talking about breast here. I thought he always meant actual cans.
Did I miss that in the episode?
I missed it too, and I'm a fucking funeral director. Because I'm watching that, and it's like, damn, he used cans? Like, all right, cool guy. When I went back, and then I started looking at, I just went on, a message boards, you know, just to get some, other takes on it, see if I missed anything. And there's everyone on there. No, he meant food, and then I was like, "Oh my god, that actually makes sense." He molded it to fix the imbalance. You know, if one's hanging a little, one's like that. Yeah, you kind of mold. I don't know why you use cat food and why you wouldn't use cotton or something, or just plastic to just whatever
liquid latex
to give the show. Right? Anything else in the world except dog food. Dog food would have been fine.
some fucking Play-Doh.
Yeah, use Play-Doh. Anything, and yes, I had just found out after watching that episode, after however many times, he actually took the cat food out of the cat food can.
Wow. Oh, man.
Right?
That's great. That's just another testament to how ridiculous this show can be.
Yes, exactly. But in terms of finishing up, so also too, when you're closing the mouth, you have your upper jaw and your lower jaw, right? And we basically have these tacks, these needle tacks, and it's called an injection gun that we attach the tacks to, and it embeds into your gum. We put one upper, one lower, and we kind of tie those two together, and that's how you shut the mouth. Keep it closed, rather. Basically, and then you got to sew up the incision, and you're sewing it sort of just like a baseball. We call it a baseball stitch, just the way you kind of close it up. In terms of the face, we have this what we call. If you ever walk into an embalming room today, it's something they didn't do on 6 Feet Under. But if you walked into any embalming room, wherever, right, all of the bodies in the prep room, if they're embalmed, they would have this white gel all over their face. And it looks rather weird if you have no idea what it is. And what it actually is it provides a nice cosmetic base to apply makeup later. So it's just sort of keep it. Embalming dries out the body, disinfects, preserves. But if trying to put makeup on an embalmed body without that massage cream is sort of just like painting sidewalk.
It's a primer.
There you go. It's your primer. God damn, you guys are so good at analogies, man.
We're trying to make it relatable for the layperson here.
Yeah.
Someone who hasn't painted any dead bodies. At least we hope not. Not uncertified.
Don't paint dead bodies, people. We're going to issue that warning right now. We don't approve.
People just see if you stumble on a body like Victor did in the woods, don't tag it with your spray paint.
Don't tag it. Just don't. That's not the end thing to do.
You got to primer it first, apparently.
Apparently.
And then go to
something I didn't know.
Man, if some stuff goes down with you guys the next few days, I'm totally going to be the blame for it.
Oh, hey, I'm on vacation. Who knows what's going to happen?
You're the fuel to the fire, man.
Oh, yeah. All right.
So that's when the makeup's applied after the putty type stuff that you were talking about?
Well, it's essentially just cream, like a lotion, a thick lotion that goes on, and that's we call it massage cream. That goes on. that stays on until the day of that person's visitation. So let's just say you embalm them on a Monday, and then Friday is going to be the visitation. Friday, you'll kind of wipe it off. You'll dress them. You'll put them in their casket, and that's when usually the cosmetics is the last step because if you're moving them around, you can get makeup on you. You get makeup in the casket. So it's usually the last thing you do right before your quote unquote family walks in.
The viewing, okay. That's what they kept calling it in 6 Feet Under.
It's different things everywhere. It's a viewing, a visitation, a wake. It's all one and the same.
Yeah, I've heard wake used a lot.
Yeah, growing up, I always heard of wake, and then as I got into business, visitation and a viewing, even so.
I kept bringing my board, and people were like, "What are you doing with this is a wake?" And I'm like, "Oh, I thought
I came to hit the wake."
Yeah, I thought we were doing this, man.
Oh, wrong wake. Sorry.
Sunscreen on the nose. No, I mean it's super interesting. It's not every day that you get to talk to someone with the profession that you have. It's a really cool insight, and I enjoy what I hear from you on your podcast for sure.
Yeah, I wish, and it's out there if you wanted to really go find it. But something I wish every single person got to see, and not because of the moral part of it or just a healthy side of it, but an autopsy bodied, where the medical examiner does the autopsy, but then we get the body after to embalm. And I'm literally the embalming I'm talking about that we just talked about. That's just a normal quote unquote embalming, where it's just if a person didn't get autopsied. Having first timers who have seen embalm and whatnot, it's nowhere near as gruesome as you think it is. It's really it's almost boring compared to what you may think it is. But an autopsied body that's wide open, they cut the chest plate out, and they cut the skull open, and you get to see inside your skull, inside your body. That's something I wish everyone got to see.
That's probably a little more intense, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't think everybody could handle that.
Fair point. Of the people who could handle it, I definitely think it's something you see. And I'll tell you what, if you fished around on the internet enough or YouTube, I'm sure it's out there.
Oh, without a doubt.
Probably. I'm sure
it's
there's
all out there, baby.
I'm sure there's medical videos out there that students use for education purposes or something.
You know what? You just reminded me. Oh man, last week I walked into work and one of my coworkers, they were looking at this Facebook Live video, and I'm like, "What are you guys watching?" It was some. Forgive me for not giving proper credit. Some medical school in Chicago, on a Facebook Live video, they were doing an autopsy.
Wow!
So absolutely, yes. They weren't doing it. What's the word? Like illegal or anything. This was a sanctioned everything. Like it came. Yes. But yeah, it was absolutely, and they were showing it, and I'm like, that's fake. There's no way. And it's just like, no, you see it and everything. Go find it. I don't know. Type Google Chicago autopsy Facebook Live video 2017, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it.
That's awesome. I'm sure that's up there in the news somewhere. People should be able to find that off of Google.
But that stuff is interesting to see because you see the inside of your body. You literally see your rib cage or your the fat. I got a nice little pot belly. You could see what the actual fat looks like. You know what I mean?
Well, it's sort of like I remember when I was in earth science in like middle school or whatever. I would always look at the rocks. When you're driving on the highway, and you would like look at them and think, "Oh, that's really cool and interesting looking." But then once I learned through earth science, like, oh, it shifts this way because of pressure, and like it's this rock on top of that rock, and you're able to identify this sort of stuff. You can look into it, sort of like you said, your stomach. You're looking into it, and you're seeing the different parts and pieces, and like understanding it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and you're actually holding it. And I mean, on a much larger scale, to which I probably will never understand. Like I've held a brain, and how your brain controls all this thing. And you're just holding it, and it feels like this, I don't know, you guys have an analogy, just a weird freaking piece of chicken, whatever. And that brain does so much that I can't even comprehend. You know what I mean?
It's like squeezing some tiki masala.
There you go.
There you go. I mean, actually, Matt, did we dissect the pig together in science class?
Yes, we did. I think we were partners. I don't
Yeah,
remember,
we went to school together, and I'm pretty sure we were partners for that. So that's the closest we've come to your profession, I'd say.
We cut that little pig up.
We got the
big of a
brain
pig
out.
was
Was that wrong to say on this podcast? Sorry, little pig.
It was like one of the tiny ones. I think it was like one of the pig, like not embryos. It was like a formed pig.
No,
but
yeah, it was like a baby
gotcha.
pig.
they gave us
Piglet.
extra credit for getting the brain out.
Yeah, we did it. It was fucking morbid, but we got through it.
I was like,
But I imagine
I
that
need
goes
these
quick.
points. I'm not passing
Now-
that next test.
While we're into this, now were you always? You don't have any like You're not a queasy stomach type guy. You've never been afraid of blood, right? I mean, going into this, were you like? Besides being nervous about the whole process, is there anything about like the morbidity about it that bothered you, or is that just not your element?
Well, let me. If I get off topic, ring me back because you.
I'll bring you back.
brought
Don't
up,
worry.
You brought up like 3 things that struck in my mind at one time. The first time I went to school for it, and I was just kind of like, "This seems cool. Let's do it." You know, it seems to be like a way I live my life. Like, oh, this sounds cool. Let's just go ahead and do this.
Cool.
The first time I went to embalming school, in Pittsburgh. You go through everything, and you know, right before you actually start classes, they're like, "Do you want to see an embalming?" Just to make sure you could handle it, right? So I'm like, "Yeah."
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And I've never been sick of blood. Like, I've never been sick of blood or anything, but when I go to get like a shot at the doctors, or they have to draw blood, I'm freaking out. I hate needles.
I'm
I hate
the same
seeing
way.
my own blood, but I'm totally cool embalming a body. You know,
That's crazy.
But-
Hates
Yeah, like,
needles,
I don't-
but he does not mind anything else.
yeah, it's a weird flaw, glitch in my system. But I get to a mortuary school, and they're like, "Do you want to go see an embalming?" I'm like, "Yes, of course. Let's get this out of the way." And definitely, I'm scared the first time because I have no idea what to expect. Right. And I walk. Okay, so let me scale this back a bit. If you've ever seen an autopsy, you guys are horror movie fans. You ever see Saw 4?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the beginning?
Was that the one with Donnie Wahlberg?
No, that was 2. I'm a huge Saw fan, right? That
Okay.
was 2. 4 was the one where the black guy Riggs. It's the one where it ends. The 2 ice blocks explode the head.
Yep.
Here's the thing. At the end of 3, Jigsaw. Spoiler alert, right? Jigsaw dies.
Yes.
And the start of 4 is the autopsy, and that's where they find that wax.
Oh, yeah.
Cassette tapes in his stomach, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and
That's the
no
most-
spoiler
that's the-
alert. It's the girl, right? That is the killer in that movie.
Yeah, you find out.
His apprentice.
Fuck all this. Let's just talk about Saw, right? So yes, you find out that you find out that Amanda
movie.
at the end of 3 is working with Jigsaw, and that's how 3 ends. They all die at the same time. 4, I always tell people the best way, the most positive way without real life of showing of an autopsy is Saw 4.
Oh yeah.
They open him up, right? Yeah. Like go back.
I'm thinking of that now. That was a pretty decent autopsy scene. At least, I mean,
Yes,
you'd have a better
yes.
opinion than I would.
The skin flaps look a little fake, just the way they kind of cut your skin open, but everything else. But I'm bringing that up to say they cut his skull open to get to his brain, and what happens is you have like a skull cap. So picture they cut, let's say, across your forehead, all the way to the back of your head, and it kind of circles around. So you could kind of take off like a cap. You take the skull cap out to get to your brain.
Because it's like it's like fused parts. Because right when babies are born, I know that it's like different parts of the skull and it fuses together over time.
Yeah, like when a baby, there's 4 parts, and God, I forget the freaking names of the skull, but yes, it's 4 parts, and you can kind of see if you ever like look at an actual skull of a adult human. There's like these like jagged little lines.
Looks like
That's how
scar
they're all
tissue
formed.
almost.
Yes, exactly, and that's the 4 parts that comes together. But I think your skull is fully formed by like age 10. But yeah, like
The jury's still out on mine. I've hit the ground pretty hard a couple times.
So yeah, they cut that skull cap open to get to your brain. So bring it back to, I walk into this embalming room for the first time, and I walk in and I'm just looking, and it's the first thing I see. That skull cap that I'm talking about drops on the floor.
Oh,
Whoa.
I just walk in and I hear this like
icebreaker.
yeah. I can't explain the sound of dropping ceramic on ceramic. It didn't shatter. It just hit the
Thud.
ground, and it's like. Yeah, and I was just like,
Ugh.
what the fuck am I doing? Like, why did I think that was going to... I had moved to Pittsburgh. I got an apartment and everything. I was like, what the fuck? What was I thinking? A skull just fell on the floor, and the person just picked it up like it was nothing. Like, what the hell am I doing?
Sound like
Oh.
a
And I was
phone book?
18.
Sorry about that.
I was 18 at the time, so it's not like I had like a good perspective on life and like whatever. I was just like, the fuck, that's a fucking skull. Like, what's going on? So that was my first, I got thrown into it, and I'm someone who was like, no, I'll play it cool. Like, oh wow, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, totally.
Whatever.
Skulls on the floor, whatever, man. I got
Happens to
it.
me-
That's
happens to
norm.
me all the time.
That's
Yeah,
the norm, you know?
I'm
Got
just
anything else?
taking the lunch orders. Like, I don't care, whatever.
So after that, I don't know, nothing has ever affected me in terms of that. Like, I never was scared or anything like that. But I think I went into it knowing that stuff didn't scare me as much. What's funny about that, like the classes, at least from my school, they had always started out of like 60, 70, 80 people. And by like week 2, it was like down to like 20.
Wow.
It weeds out everybody. It weeds out anyone who's like, oh man, I love death so much. And it's like, okay, learn about every entire artery in your body. It's like, no. I'd just rather be a person who likes death and not have to go to school for it,
Did the professor go, look to your left, look to your right, all of you will die?
Oh, man, that's a hell of a
Like,
way
damn.
to start the fucking course.
He's right.
And tell
He's
people
not
to
wrong,
get
guys.
up and leave.
He's got our number.
One day you all will be on this table.
It's like, fuck. Great.
Wait, in front of a class? Wait, what?
Victor's sitting there. Well, it can only go up from here. Let's keep going with this. No, it sounds like it's, I don't want to say competitive, but almost like it weeds people out pretty quickly.
It weeds people out right from the start.
Yeah.
You get a lot of people, like I said, I had a lot of people who were just like, oh, I love death. I'm so fascinated by death and whatever. And then it's just like, that's cool. Like, like I said, like you have to learn about every vein, artery in the body. You got to learn about accounting. You got to learn about all this stuff that it's like, yeah, forget it. Mortuary school's hard, and it like any other profession, everything you learn in school means dick when you get out. My first day of work, I was cutting shrub hedges.
You're like, man, I just want to be in there with the bodies. Just
Yeah,
let me get in there. I don't want to be out here.
This lawnmower. Yeah, can I put down the lawnmower. Can I get in the prep room? And it's like, yeah, earn your stripes.
You got to work your way up to bodies. You start on hedges.
Yep.
Cut this first, exactly.
Well, you got 10 years under your belt, and then some.
Yeah, that guy with 6 months. For the long time, I had worked as a trade funeral director, and as I was explaining earlier, that's just, I work for a freelance of sorts. I work for a bunch of funeral homes. The thing about that was I would get called any time of the day. So I would get called at 6 a.m., and I would get called at 3 a.m. or in the middle of the afternoon.
Oof.
It's really hard to have a life like that,
Yeah, it sounds rough.
Yep, always on call. Oh, yeah.
But it was fascinating to also be home at Tuesday in the afternoon playing video games while everyone's at work,
Which system you game on?
Right now, I'll tell you what. You know what I just bought today? I had kept all my systems, so I have all of them.
Okay.
I'm a PS4
that's
guy.
how I am.
I'm a PS4 guy, but I actually just, a funny story. I had a bet with my friend about Rogue One, Star Wars. He didn't live up to the bet. He was supposed to buy me Majora's Mask, Nintendo 64.
Oh, nice.
So finally, after we had a bet, he never lived up to it from the movie, and I just bought Majora's Mask, the box and the game.
Damn, nice.
Yeah, right. And I'm patiently waiting for that to get here. I'm checking the tracking every day.
eBay purchase?
Yeah, eBay.
What did
Fucking
that
love it.
run you for Majora's Mask?
You know what? Because it wasn't sealed, I had to be a little bit realistic. Because it's funny. I wanted the box, and as you get to a certain age, it's not like you have friends over every day. The only person who's going to actually see the Majora's mask box is going to be my girlfriend, and she couldn't give two shits. It's a cardboard.
Oh,
her,
yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. Oh,
but to
yeah,
me,
I
it means the
understand.
world. But to me, it means the world to have it. You know, Majora's Mask is my favorite game and everything. So
She's like, I wouldn't be with him if it wasn't for that box.
but that's how I rationalize it in my head, or like somehow Link, who's a totally fictional character, is going to walk in my apartment one day and be like, "Get the fuck out of here! You also have this," you know. But that's never ever going to happen, you know. But it being a used box and it was a little rough around the edges, it actually only ran me 80. The box is
That's not bad.
Pretty.
That's not bad.
But like the pristine ones, the ones that haven't been opened, and I don't know how they've been able to do that over 16 years.
Right.
Those were like
Imagine.
1,000, 1,300, 1,500, and I was like,
Jesus.
yeah, I fucking I love Legend of Zelda, not that much, you
Right.
know?
Well, I got an N64. I only got a couple of games for it. Mario Party, I think, is one of them, and one or two
Yeah.
others. But they're hard to
Oh.
come by, especially since they're not being
I have
made
the
anymore.
Zelda. I don't have the box like Victor here, but I got Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I will never get rid of
Yeah.
them.
Nice.
Oh, God.
I mean, that pretty much brings us to the end of the show here. I know we're talking video games. We do cover that from time to time.
Yep.
But
We're nerds. We are.
we wanted to give you the chance before we start doing our plugs, if there's anything you'd like to throw out there in terms of your show, any of your social media.
I am at Digging. If you are a Twitter person, you could find me on Twitter. I'm at Digging Podcast. My website for this show, and I'm trying to direct people to the website because I'm going to be starting updating stuff on there and uploading. It's simply diggingpodcast.com. If you're listening to this now, I'm doing a bonus bonus secret episode that I'm trying to keep under wraps. I just finished season 1, so I'm doing a week break in between season 1 and 2. But in between there, I'm making like a really big push to try and get the word out there about the podcast. So I'm going to be uploading let's just say a secret movie podcast episode.
Cool.
And yeah, I'm on Facebook too. I'm at Digging 6 Feet Under. And yeah, that's mostly where you can find me. We'll be starting season 2 around February 6th. I'll do the first episode. I try to have different guests on every week. Season 2, I have an actor coming on. I have a casket salesman coming on. I have a guy from a Star Trek podcast.
Cool.
There used to be a podcast that did my show about 5 years ago. I'm having them on, sort of like a reunion episode. I got someone from an embalming podcast coming on. So
An
I'm really
embalming
trying to,
podcast.
Yeah, go
Man.
figure,
I mean,
right?
I know we said there was one for everything, but I was a little surprised to hear that.
All you need to know is there's a podcast about bagels, and that's your clear, definitive line that there's a podcast on any and everything.
Right?
Yeah, true. Very true. Very true.
So if you're a fan of the show, if you're a fan of 6 Feet Under, or if you're interested about the funeral industry, I would say definitely take a listen. I try to be informative as possible. And so, yeah.
Well, I've definitely learned a lot.
Listening, man, we learned a lot, and on this episode, we learned a lot. For
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. This has been great. Happy to have you,
But,
man.
thank you. This was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, guys.
Yeah,
We'll
definitely
have to do it again once we
Yes,
get into
yeah.
another season. Maybe we should get you coming back for each season that you cover, and we can
That would
keep
be
talking
awesome. That
about
would be
6
awesome.
Feet Under. That'd be kind of cool.
That would be cool. It'd give us a chance to catch up to you. Watch the whole series.
That'd be totally awesome.
Alrighty, so this is the time where we plug our stuff. Well, if you guys want to check us out, americanslacker.wordpress.com. That is our main hub. That is our website for now. Also, you can find us on Facebook or Instagram, American Slacker Podcast.
We are also on Twitter at AMERSLKR Podcast, and Reddit is the same, AMERSLKR Podcast. Sorry, the name's all fucked up. Our Patreon is up and running. If you want a way to support us, go visit our Patreon. You can get to it from our website or by searching American Soccer Podcast on Patreon. So, yeah, that's all the plugs.
Victor Rubio, it was a pleasure to have you, brother. Thank you, man.
It was a pleasure, and that was a lot of fun, guys. A lot of fun.
6 Feet Under Podcast. Check them out. We're
Check
happy
them out.
to be listening, man.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in every week. Even if this is the first episode you listen to, we love you. And that's it.
There you go.
Should I hit stop now? Yeah, right? Yeah. So you guys need any more help about that body you killed? You need any more help recovering it?
Yep.
Yeah.